Hi everybody, my name's Pieta Valentine. I've written 2 books, The Resident's Voice from a Dementia Unit and The Resident's Rise from a Dementia Unit. Now, the topic of today's session is a more sobering topic, I have to say, and it's about helping father with anger in a dementia unit. So anger in men is always a sad topic. It often equates with violence and injury, and there's nothing really happy about it. But the thing is that it does happen in a dementia unit, and it does need to be addressed, and still a lot can be done. I mean, the 2 previous videos I've done on depression and anxiety is a lot more affecting for the individual naturally. You know, when they're not lashing out at people, they're not causing damage or harm. But with anger, unfortunately, the person can cause a lot of damage and harm. So we really have to go through this in a more sort of technical way, so to speak. I think what we'll do is we'll start with the 3 levels of anger. And all of this, by the way, I've written about 40 pages in The Resident's Rise, Epilogue 1, on anxiety, depression and anger, and the low, moderate and high levels of each stage, and how to address each stage, you know, systematically. So if you like reading and you like having access to this information, it's a good idea to get the book, and I'll leave a link below. So with anger, low-level anger, I mean, we all get a bit angry at times, so, you know, now and then, but we can sort of brush it off and, you know, not harm anyone, and maybe a few angry words, and that's it, you know, we move on. So I think we don't worry about that too much. But when it starts to get moderate anger is when the person's, you know, clenching their, you know, tense in the neck and clenching the jaw and muttering and angry, and, you know, you can see them stewing and feuding and not resolved with any issue, and they're sort of grumbling about this, and then they're yelling out here, and they're not exactly hitting out, but they're not far off it. But they still have their times when they can snap out of it, especially if you're taking them for a walk or for a lovely walk to the beach, if it's their favourite spot. Exercise is good, because, you know, anger is very adrenalizing, and it sort of gets the person really wound up. We know that. And so they've got to actually get rid of that adrenaline, physical adrenaline, firstly, all that cortisol. And if they could just walk it out and be out in nature, fresh air, sunshine, with someone who they feel comfortable with, confident with, that often helps a lot. High-level anger, unfortunately, is when the person just can hardly snap out of it, you know. But like depression and anxiety, they're just in a fixed state. Now, definitely then you'll need to go to the doctor and the nursing establishment, even moderate anger, because even in moderate anger, that's like on a grade of 0 to 10, between about 4 and 7. Even within that moderate range, when it gets to, say, 5 out of 10, you're probably talking to the doctor about it by then, aren't you? You know, at the 3 monthly meetings, and you're discussing if there's other ways to manage it. And, you know, unfortunately with anger, it's often as a medication that's brought in, because especially if the person's getting aggressive and hitting out at other residents, and often staff as well, you know, it does have to be controlled. So that's why we really try and deal with these things early on. Also, actually, with depression and anxiety, I didn't mention in the last 2 videos, I don't think, but certainly it's in detail in the book. For high level of any of these emotional states, anger, anxiety, depression, high levels of any of these states, you need to mention it to the doctor, the nursing staff, you know, go with them on the medication, balancing out accurate medication, making sure that you're aware of what the medication is, and that you can discuss it with the doctor and feed back to him the symptoms if the resident isn't, etc. Just really develop a working team approach with this. But even before it gets to high, if it's getting to the high end of moderate, and you can think, oh, you see that things aren't really working for any of these anxiety, depression, anger states, you'll use your common senses to mention it to the doctor, and also the nursing staff will pick up on these aspects as well and mention it either to you as the relative, especially the power of attorney who has all that control, and then at the medical meeting. So you work together. But in terms of low and moderate level with anxiety and depression, you can do a lot, it's safe, you can help a lot. With anger, a bit more specific. So I'd say with the low level, exercise is the thing. Really, especially if it's a man who's not elderly or frail, he's in his 70s, men are still pretty strong. Even in their 80s, some men are strong, but 70s definitely. So they need to get out because it's so frustrating. Like if they're in this institution, banging at the door and they've got all their gear, they just want to get out. So any relative that's coming in tentatively into the unit, they want to push their way out, which is actually another issue about safety at the door, and who comes in, who comes out. And often, actually, what happens is that relatives can get confused for residents, because a lot of residents are very well dressed and look well, and so relatives let them out because they think that they're relatives, not residents, unless the resident has a name badge on or something like that, which they sometimes do if they've escaped. But of course, then if they escape, they've got no orientation, they don't know where they are. I mean, it's just onto the highway, or, you can imagine how that affects the unit, because, no security for their relative. The relatives get very concerned about that, and it does create a lot of problems. So when you go into a dementia unit, that's why it's important to get to know the relatives, the residents, especially those that are at the door, banging at the door, wanting to get out. They're the ones that will escape. So you need to take note of those people, residents, so that when you go out the door, they're not going to escape out with you, And if you go, just say to the nursing staff at the desk, or they'll see often, that you're there trying to get out. If another resident is trying to compete with you to go out under your shadow, they'll just call the resident back, or find some way of calling them back. Difficult sometimes. And then you can sneak out, or otherwise go in the back door, out the back door. There's always another entrance, and that will de-escalate the situation somewhat. So with an angry father, for example, very sad. No one likes seeing their father angry. I mean, no one likes seeing anyone angry, but, your father, who we all love our father, I mean, they can get so desperate in a unit, feeling so confined. It's like a tiger in a cage. And I know I had one policeman he was a policeman, ex-policeman, patient, and he said, look, I haven't done anything. Why am I jailed up in here? Why am I incarcerated? Why am I jailed? I've done nothing wrong. And they feel that they're being trapped in a prison for no reason. That's their experience. Otherwise, they can feel that maybe they've got a terminal illness and something's wrong with them, and you're not telling them that. Or they can feel that maybe you just don't want them in your life anymore, and that you've divorced them and you've stuck them in this institution, a mental institution. I mean, all sorts of things can go through their mind as to why you've done this. So that's why the whole orientation thing, back to the basics, sitting them down, explaining to you, in a loving way, over a cup of tea, quietly, slowly, look, you're in here because of memory loss, and we weren't able to manage at home, and, you were forgetting things and wandering out onto the road, and it was dangerous and you couldn't find your way. Whatever, risks there were, explain it again, probably for the 100th time, and that now you're in a safe place, and we both discussed it together. We decided that you did need to come into here, which hopefully you've done, and you're looked after well here, everything's covered, it's all paid for, that you have your meals, we'll still support you, the family's still with you, we'll visit regularly, etc., etc., etc. Now, this is, it can get tiresome, I know, but just find a way to be able to refresh this repeat process, because the person really needs to be reassured, because underneath they're desperate. Underneath the anger is desperation, anxiety, not more than anxiety, it's desperation. And they need to be so reassured because they've lost so much confidence. Their memory's gone. They're disorientated. They're new at the place. They don't know anyone. They're separated from you, their beloved wife or partner, and they're having to deal with this situation they do not want to be in. So you can imagine how much reassurance is needed to try and calm the person down, even if they're not super angry. But when they're angry especially, it's even worse, isn't it? More difficult. So that's why, if at all possible, take them out for walks and visit, to the park and the beach, and really make a genuine effort to try and, settle them down, because I know it's a big effort taking people out, and of course if they get too angry, then you can't take them out, because you can't get them back in again, because they won't want to get back in, because they know what that place is like, and then what are you left with? They can't go home, it's too difficult. So then if they're left at high level anger in the unit, that's sad, because either they have, especially if they're lashing out at people and injuring other residents, especially other residents, although they often will be, for sure, injuring staff as well, especially through cares, then, the doctor has to be brought in, the person has to be reassessed and medicated. And by the way, with any medication, the power of attorney has to okay it. So you will know the medication they're on, but take an interest in the doses and all of that. And of course, medication has side effects. And, still with the medication, if the person's not managing and they're still aggressive, then they'll have to go on to a higher level dementia unit where there's more restraints. And you don't want that for your father, you don't want that for anyone. Everyone wants to stay at the more lower level dementia unit, where even though, there's restrictions, there's not as many restrictions as there are at a higher level dementia care facility. So when you visit Dad, of course, what happens is family get really on edge, because they think, oh, how's he going to be today? He's angry last week. And it's like, it's embarrassing, it's awkward, it's difficult for the family, knowing that people are getting injured. And every time someone gets injured or there's an incident, then the charge nurse is obliged or needs to phone the family and inform them. And sometimes some families are being informed 4 or 5 times a day of the injuries that are being caused by other, to other residents. And if the injuries aren't so damaging, usually bruising, it's bad enough, it's quite painful. Wrist burns, bruising, hits, if they're not breaking bones or pushing, people get pushed over in dementia units and, fracturing hips. It's devastating, because that can affect a whole person's life forever, isn't it? They then off to the hospital, and maybe they'll never get back to the dementia unit. So keeping residents safe in a dementia unit is a really big thing. So that's why, if you're coming in to see, say, your husband, and he's angry, he's angry, bring in your son, bring in your brother, bring in, I don't know, any friend who can be with you to give you moral support. And if the man starts getting testy, at least you've got another strong man there that can actually help out if need be, restrain him a bit and have a firm word. Because I've seen that. I've seen a supportive son. I actually wasn't a witness, that I have to say, but I heard it through the grapevine. This guy was an ex-policeman, and he's a lovely man, but he had been trailed by this woman. She was really irritating. She was provoking him, and he did get testy. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't physically aggressive, but verbally abusive. But his son was there to hold him back. The son had never seen him in this state, but the son held him back and diverted him and moved him up the corridor. And that was the best thing that could have happened, because if the family member's there to sort of de-escalate the person, then it doesn't reach the charts, so to speak, because every violent incident, has to be noted in the charts, the doctor's alerted, and medication can be adjusted and increased, and on it goes. But if the family member's been there to hold the man back or de-escalate him, then it's not charted because there's been no damage. So that's why it's always good to have another strong man around who can handle it, and not to think that just because the man's angry that coming in makes him more angry. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you've always been a supportive partner and you've got a supportive family, hopefully, like, support is always going to help anyone in any situation, especially when you're under stress. I think, you know, work in with the establishment, work in with the doctor, but try as much as you can to offer that support and be there, not to escape when you see, you know, they're angry. Oh, I'm just going to go, you know, 5 minutes is enough here, I'm just exiting. Try and just see if, even if you can't go outside because they can't exit because then they won't go back again, just walk around the corridors, go onto the veranda, have a cup of tea, you know, something, you know, work out a way of bringing your jigsaw puzzles don't work with high anger, I have to say. But so, yeah, get a cup of tea or coffee. I think talking's the big thing. Just talk it through. See what the main issue is with them. You know, they're angry at you, they're angry that they're locked up, they're angry, they think that they're sick, whatever it is, that they find out what's going on in their brain. Work it out, work it through, you know, and don't be in a rush with it. Don't let them feel, you know, let them feel that they've got enough time. You've got enough time to just spend with them, and you've got the time to work through it with them. That's the important thing, because if they feel rushed and under pressure, they won't relax and they won't give the information you need to work through with them. So it's all about reassurance and explaining. It's always difficult leaving the unit, of course, you know, because they never want you to leave. But there's the ways around that too, which we'll go into later. So I think these are the main points on anger. I think especially for this book, for this topic, which is a serious topic, it's good to get the book on this and read that chapter, that whole epilogue, you know, because there's a lot in it, and it's important, you know, if your father's to stay at the unit and for you to manage the best way you can, you need to know all the ins and outs of anger and medication, working with the doctor and how to de-escalate and etc. Now, I've just actually been speaking to another YouTube, do you call it blogger? A YouTuber. Okay, well, she's not actually she's a friend, and she has another friend in Penang who actually does a lot of these YouTube videos for expats coming to Penang. And other advice I've received is that I need to be saying, which I haven't said at all, by the way, with my other 10 videos or whatever I've done over the last 4 days. I need to be saying, if you like this video, if you like it, click the like. Well, of course, everyone appreciates that. But for me, I'm particularly interested in you putting in a comment. A comment, because that will actually, that will determine the content of the future videos. And that's important to be able to steer the way, to be able to help with relatives, with dementia relatives in residential facilities. So that, and then also you have a lot of power. Viewers have a lot of power. So you can also send an email link onto someone else, and you can subscribe. So all of those things. But whatever suits you, please do something to contribute to this online community about dementia, because so much needs to be known, doesn't it? So many people really have so little knowledge of dementia, let alone what to do and how to help people with dementia when they're institutionalized with it. So it is a movement that really needs to happen, and it's not going to happen unless people are informed. So if you have a friend or family member or, you know, colleague at work that you know their mother has dementia, just let them know about the site, you know, come to it or send them a link or an email or something, just something to help them. I mean, you know, everyone has a different way of learning and registering and upskilling, but this is a practical perspectives and positive techniques that people can adjust, imbibe and adopt for helping people in dementia facilities. So thank you. That's the end of the video today, and I hope that I can get in contact with you out there and start communicating with you. I will enjoy that. Thank you.